Hello, welcome to Alyssa Jean's Reviews. My name is Alyssa, and this is my review for Star Wars Andor Season 1. This review is meant for people who have seen up through the end of Star Wars Andor Season 1. So if you have not seen that, then you would not want to watch this video lest you be spoiled. So Star Wars Andor. So, I'm going to offer a little bit of a different perspective than what you might normally see on the YouTube. I know that my YouTube feed is overwhelmed with videos talking about how amazing Star Wars Andor is, how it is the best Star Wars show, how it is possibly the best project from Star Wars since the original trilogy, etc. etc. Now, I'm not the only one with this, what I would call a dissenting opinion. Steve Shives, for one, if you follow his channel, he did a video about how slow and boring and how nothing is happening in Andor. And of course, many of you who are subscribed to my channel are also subscribed to my brother's channel. That would be Mark over in Enchantment of Eternity. And he and I are on the same page on a lot of things related to Star Wars Andor. In fact, I watched his review before I recorded mine and thought, damn, he's saying a lot of the things that I wanted to say. So I am going to still say some of those things. So I will be a little bit repetitive for those of you who watch both of our channels. Sometimes we are just in sync because we didn't, talk to each other about our opinions. We just both came to a lot of the same conclusions. However, I also have my own spin on it, my own flair. Like, I don't just agree with every single little thing that he said, but I am on the same page with him for those of you who are familiar with his channel. Now, for those of you who are not, well, first of all, you should subscribe to his channel, but also, let me tell you, you may be more used to just hearing about how wonderful and amazing Star Wars Andor is and how it is the best Star Wars show ever, and I don't think so. And for me, it's not only is it not the best Star Wars show ever, but it's not even the best Star Wars show this year. And this is a place that my brother and I disagree, because for me, Obi-Wan is light years better than this. Like, not even close. I also like Obi-Wan better than a lot of other people do. So there is that. But I also think Tales of the Jedi is light years better than this. So I think this is a distant third place. This is better than Boba Fett. I'll give it that. But it's a distant third place of this year alone. And then you look at the greater Star Wars universe, all of the shows that there's been. Star Wars Rebels is vastly superior to this. Clone Wars is better than this. I would probably put it on par with Mandalorian seasons 1 and 2, but I also think The Mandalorian is another show that's vastly overrated. So I also don't like that as much as other people do. But so I would probably put it on par with that. But I don't think it's remotely close to the best Star Wars show. Now, there are some things that I agree with all of the positive reviews, all the people who are singing the praises of Andor. Some of the things that they point out that they really like about Andor, I agree with. There are some positives in it. So I'm going to start with the positives because I don't want this whole entire video to just be me bashing it, because I do overall still enjoy it. I still think it was a decent show. I just don't think it is as great as everyone else makes it out to be. But I am going to start with the positives, and then I'll get into my more specific critiques. All right, so I will start with the positives, because you should always start with the positives before you give the critique. The what needs to improve or what could have been better. So I do agree with those who say that this has a very nuanced and complex way of approaching the rebellion versus the empire dynamic, and really dives more deeply into the rebellion as a complex organization, one that is not going to be all sunshine and roses and is going to be all infallible heroes the way that the original trilogy kind of made them out to be. This is war. In any war, there is going to be ugliness on both sides of that war, and the rebellion would be no exception. Well, I do think Rebels did touch on this a little bit as well. Rogue One also touched on it a little bit as well. This kind of does a deeper dive into, especially the dark side of the rebellion, because not only do we see Saul Guerrero again, but we also see Luthen. And unlike Saul Guerrero, Luthen is on Mon Mothma's side at this point. We see in Rebels later on in the timeline, Mon Mothma is completely against Saul Guerrero and his tactics, but she's kind of willfully ignorant to Luthen's tactics, which are equally as dirty. And Luthen is willing to sacrifice an entire portion of the rebellion, what was it, like 33 lives, including this important person named Krieger, who was mostly off screen, although I think we saw a holographic picture of him. He was willing to sacrifice that in order to keep his mole intact because it was better for the greater rebellion. And these are the types of things that would definitely happen in a war like this that it's really interesting to see more of in Star Wars. And on the flip side, it is interesting to see a more intimate look at the Empire and looking at the IBS, which is just a certain organization, part of the Empire that we have never really seen before, and seeing just how bureaucratic and corporate looking it is. I find it really interesting that it does look like a boring corporate office because there's I think, a lot of similarities between evil empires and corporations. Corporations are evil empires. Dun, dun, dun. Anyways, and I love how they kind of get us to root for that one female Empire character. I'm blanking on her name at the moment, but I'll get it before this video is over. That at the beginning of the season, I was like, oh yeah, she's being treated like crap and they're not believing her. Yeah, I'm really rooting for her. Oh wait, she's evil. She's in the Empire. So I love that they got me to do that. So I find that to be really interesting. They had a much more interesting look into the minutia, the inner workings of both the rebellion and the Empire. But now to segue into what I'm about to talk about of my critiques is they probably get a little too much into the minutia, and that's where I will start with my critiques. Okay. So what do I mean by getting too much into the minutia? So I agree with what my brother said that this series probably should have been cut in half. 12 episodes is way too much. There are way too many extraneous scenes and too many extraneous characters. I could not keep track of all these characters, and many of them are completely unnecessary. So you want to get into the minutia of the rebellion, but you don't need to show this relationship between these two women. I definitely felt like there was queer baiting because there was no point of it, and go nowhere with it. Like, they don't do anything with that. So what was the point of those characters? I think the blonde lady, she was important in the first half of the season and then kind of does nothing, and then every once in a while checks in with her girlfriend, but that relationship goes nothing. So it definitely felt like queer baiting. There was no point for any of their scenes, and I don't need to see all these scenes with this fucking dude from Ferrex who works at the construction company or whatever it was the Andor knew at the beginning of the season, like his friend or whatever. They showed so many scenes with him doing nothing. Like, why is he even there? Like, what is the point of that character? And I'm sorry, but that little droid is very cute and everything, but like, what was the point of him? Like, I don't know. There's just so much pointless characters, but there is no character more pointless than I'm going to make sure I get his name correct. I believe it is Cyril Karn, who is in the beginning working for this basically glorified security company that thinks it's the Empire, that is not, but it's not. Well, first of all, I thought the entire first 3 episodes should have been just cut out, except maybe the end of the third episode. I mean, you do have to have Andor meet Luthen, so that's got to be in there somehow. So somehow you do have to introduce that. But at least the first two episodes were just a complete waste of time, including those flashbacks. It's some of the most pointless flashbacks I've ever seen in my life. There was no point to them, and they were completely boring. And then the big enemy for these first two episodes is this half-ass security company that's an Empire wannabe, headed by the most obnoxious, annoying, pointless character in the history of television, Cyril Karn. This is why I cannot get on board with all the praise for this show being the best Star Wars show, because it has like one of the worst characters I've ever seen on television, or at least in a very long time. He was obnoxious. He was annoying. All he wanted to do was, I've got to get Andor because he killed these two assholes who were definitely assholes. And he didn't mean to kill them, but they deserved to get their asses kicked. And he's like, he killed my fellow security people. Why do I care? Why do I care about any of this? I don't. The show gave me no reason to care about any of that. And then once it was done, I was like, okay, good. We don't have to see Cyril Karn anymore. And yet we did inexplicably still have to see him. I could live the rest of my life and never have to see that fucking dude eat cereal with blue milk. Like, all he did was sit around and listen to his mother complain about him and eat cereal and blue milk. Why am I watching this? This is so bad. And all he ends up doing ultimately is saving, I think Deidre is her name, the Empire lady that I was referring to earlier. He ends up saving her in the end. Maybe they're setting up for something for season 2. But if he doesn't become important until season 2, then introduce him in season 2, because he sure as hell wasn't important at all in this season. I cannot stress enough how much I hated the existence of this character and how obnoxious he was every time he came on the screen. And that's the worst of it. But I think there's just so much character-wise that could have just been chopped out entirely, and story-wise. So let me talk a little bit about the story of it all and like how that could have been condensed. So story-wise, I think each of the 4 blocks had its exciting climax. So there was 4 blocks of stories. As I said, the episode 3, that was exciting, whatever, and you needed Luthen to meet Andor. Fine. Episode 6, which was the heist, I think it was probably the peak of the season. I think that could have honestly been more toward the end of the season. I think in a much condensed story. That was excellent. You had that, and then you had the prison break, which was also very exciting. That was fun. That was a good episode. And then you had the finale. And I am gotta say that the scene with the holographic projection of Andor's mom saying, "Fight! Fight the Empire!" That was pretty badass. That got the blood flow pumping for me. That was like, yes! Like I did really like that. I was predictable, but it was really good. That really got me pumped up. I did really like that scene. So those are the highlights. And most everything in between that was just unnecessary. I mean, you do need some build up to some of these things. But the season felt very disjointed to me. It felt like, again, those first 2 episodes could have been cut out entirely. We didn't even need that. That was completely disconnected from the heist scene, other than the fact that it ends with Luthen coming in there. But the first 2 episodes completely disconnected from the heist. And then from the heist, you have Andor then being arrested and put in prison, but not because of the big bad thing that he did, the actual crime that he committed, as he just instead gets put into the prison for no reason. And I guess they used the prison storyline to give him a motivation to go join the rebellion, I suppose. But I don't know. I feel like you could cut that out entirely, and his mom dying and then all of those things that happened on Ferrix would have been motivation enough for him. He already, kind of experienced the rebellion with the heist, I think he only needed a little bit more to push him over the edge. I don't think he needed to go to prison. And yes, I know the whole prison thing is like, ooh, we're making the Death Star, and that's kind of the point of it. But did we need it? I would say no. I don't think we needed it. Yeah, I can't really go through and just and pull out all the excess fat. That should have been an editor's job. I don't know how this got to 12 episodes. This was just way too much unnecessary stuff. And it was so slow. And the Mon Mothma stuff was interesting. I've always liked Mon Mothma as a character, and it was really cool to get to see her a little earlier on in her career with the Rebellion before she just leaves the Senate and flat out joins the Rebellion, which we see in Star Wars Rebels. So this is before that, so I find that very interesting, but again, so slow. So many unnecessary scenes with her and her husband and drinking wine at parties, and God. I mean, you need better writing, better editing, better something, better storytelling overall in this show. I just cannot get behind this being the best Star Wars show thing. I just can't do it. I just can't. But let me bring this back around, because I'm going to end with my rating out of 10, and my rating out of 10 is going to be probably higher than you think it might be, just because of all the complaining that I've been doing. But no, there's still things that the show did well, which I talked about before. The getting inside baseball into the Rebellion and showing more of kind of the, I don't want to say dark side, because that word's already used in Star Wars, but kind of the, well, frankly, the darker side of the Rebellion, getting into that a little bit more, showing a little bit more detail of the inner workings of the Empire and some of the conflicts within the Empire itself. That was all very interesting. I thought some of the acting with the characters that did belong there, such as Andor and Mon Mothma and Luthen especially, the acting was spectacular. Some of the main characters were really well-written characters. So yeah, there's a lot to like about this episode, or this season, I should say. Overall, I did come away enjoying it, but it's just relative to what everyone else is saying about it. I end up bashing it a lot, because I just feel like there was a lot to criticize, to critique here in this season, and I don't feel like outside of my brother's channel and Steve Shives' channel, I haven't seen a whole lot of it, so I have to be honest and express my critique for it as well. So let me go ahead and jump into my rating out of 10, which, as I said, might be a little higher than you think it will be. So 1 would be the lowest possible score. 10 would be the highest possible score. I'm going to go ahead and give Andor a 7.5, which puts it above a lot of the shows that I've watched this year, including Book of Boba Fett and Ms. Marvel and a bunch of other shows. It puts it on the same, puts it on par with She-Hulk, which I also gave a 7.5 to, but below a lot of other shows that I've seen. So where I have it currently in my rankings, I am up to I believe 27 shows that I've watched total, and I think Andor is around number 16 or 17 or something like that. So it's kind of in the middle. So yeah, it was a decent show. I enjoyed it. Hopefully season 2 will work out some of the kinks, and season 2 will improve upon it. But I am far from declaring this the best Star Wars show. I think it's somewhere in the middle of all the Star Wars shows. Somewhere ranked in the middle of all of them. So that's it for my review, a 7.5 for Andor. And thanks so much for joining me. Please join me for all of my Star Trek content. You can get that by subscribing, as well as my Star Wars content, although I do have a lot more of Star Trek than Star Wars. Also, I do monthly videos about my life as a trans woman, so you should check out all of those sorts of things. Please subscribe, and I will see you really soon. Goodbye.